Okay, call this meeting of the Porterville City Council to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Carrillo,
Present.
Councilmember Peñalosa, Councilmember Stowe, Vice Mayor Flores,
Present.
Mayor Reyes.
Present. Thank you. Now the time for oral communications, opportunity to address City Council on any matters scheduled for closed session unless additional time is authorized by the council. All commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone? I don't see anybody in the chambers. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to address the council?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. And we can move on to the closed session item.
Thank you, Your Honor. One item before the City Council in closed session this evening pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, Conflict with Labor Negotiator Agency Negotiator John Lawless, Employee Organizations, Fire Officer Series, and Porterville City Firefighter Association. Staff's report.
Okay, thank you. We'll move into closed session and reconvene open session at 5:30. Okay, reconvene from closed session. Is there anything to report?
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. At this time, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll go ahead and lead it and remain standing for a moment of silence. Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And we will have a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. You may be seated. All right, this is the time. Oh, John, sorry. I just jumped right into that. Would you like to sing the national anthem?
I thought you were going to say, do you want to go ahead and go back to the?
That was I jumped the gun on that, sorry about that.
No, no worries.
But that brings us to oral communications. Is there anyone who would like to, is there anyone in the chamber who's not with the Chamber of Commerce that would like to speak during oral communications? Okay. Is there anyone virtually who would like to comment?
Your Honor, we received 0 written email, and nobody in the attending list would like to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. And with that being said, we can move on to the scheduled matter.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your meeting this evening has been scheduled at the council's request from its meeting back on April 6th, asking for this meeting to be scheduled to consider the agreement between the city and the Porterville Chamber of Commerce and in an effort to establish mutual goals and objectives, and certainly a timely conversation given certainly all the challenges over the last year and a half, and as it appears to be light at the end of the tunnel for our community within the next couple of weeks. The city and the chamber have a longstanding agreement in the provision of community promotion activities, with the agreement having last been modified back in October of 2019, which a copy of that modification was provided. Certainly given the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the past and current effect on preventing some of the important community activities that are mentioned in the agreement, as well as impacts to local tourism, the council and the chamber may wish to consider this evening how this agreement could be modified to account for post-pandemic goals and objectives for community promotion and promoting local tourism. I know when the chamber provided its quarterly report last meeting, 2 meetings ago now, a lot of those different, I think that was a message that was brought as part of that about looking at promoting local tourism and how that could be done. And I would say it's, like I said, with the, I guess the perspective of being able to, again, safely and legally, 2 important words there, handle or schedule community events. How do we promote the community? And I would say with how can we work together, and how to and does the agreement stand as is in meeting that, or is there modifications that would go towards better supporting the goals and objectives both of the city and of the chamber? The hope would be that it'd be one of dialogue this evening. I'll tell you from a staff perspective, and there's some of these questions, sadly the inability to have 2 Iris festivals back-to-back years. The Iris Festival in 2020 was one of the first victims of the pandemic, and certainly the same has held true. So question from the staff's perspective as we're designing Main Street, or in the reconstruction of Main Street, what is the themes that would be helpful as part of that reconstruction. As we're looking, COVID has taught us some things about providing outdoor areas. We're looking at some of those larger planters and being able to do pergolas and outdoor seating areas. And I know Jason's done a little bit of an analysis looking at some of those. And so, but we also you kind of have a unique opportunity here with the chamber as you're promoting local tourism as to what are the themes or how does this community on the other side of this plan together towards highlighting the community and branding itself, so to speak. I know the chamber has gone through a branding initiative, and essentially we are in a new branding initiative ourselves with the Mighty 190, which has been embraced by Caltrans of all groups. So there's a lot of positive things moving. U.S. Forest Service having located their headquarters back at the original headquarters site from the 30s, I believe. And stated purpose from the forest supervisor is to have people, as they're on their way up to the Trail of 100 Giants or on their way to Sequoia National Park, stop in Porterville, get off on 190, come down Main Street, eat downtown. What does the downtown offer? Visit the visitor center at the Forest Service headquarters, and then either go back up, come up Plano and go back up to the Trail of 100 Giants, or get back on 65 and head on up to Sequoia National Park. So great potential and opportunities for the city and for the chamber in terms of promoting the community, promoting business, and what I believe is going to be, and has already shown that post-COVID, looking for outdoor recreational types of things and not your Disneyland experiences or things of that nature. So how might working together better promote that? So with that, I'll present it back to the council, and I know that you have chamber representatives with you here this evening as well.
Okay, council, did you have any questions for staff before we start a dialogue or a preferred, no?
No, I didn't.
Okay, and I know we have members from the Chamber of Commerce here. And have you all had a chance or been furnished with the contract to review? Because I know we're talking about the contract, so I want to make sure that we have found a solid foundation to get back to in case our discussions get into things that aren't included in there. But is there anybody that wanted to maybe stand, because I think we're looking at the contract. I know we've had impacts from COVID and events that are some are in there and some historical events haven't happened, but I know that there's also some new ideas, some new events that you may have discussed, and I think that might help us understanding what you're looking for. That way we can weigh it with what's written and see if we can make a match as we go through the discussion. So I'll allow you to come up and let us know where you're at and what you're thinking in regards to the contract or activities going forward.
Yeah, I sent over like a little presentation.
Great.
I don't think that there's a lot that goes back to the contract in this. So if you want to discuss the contract first, we can let me know how, how this should go.
I'm not sure for the rest of the council, but I think if you want to present this, it would allow me to be able to see how it could apply to the contract and just in the discussions to see how we could make possible adjustments rather than reinventing the contents.
Okay, I think where we're coming from with this presentation is really, I will say that I'm not one to bring my personal life into business. But I don't want this presentation being short to make it seem like I'm not passionate about what I'm doing. My young 1-year-old son has been in the hospital for the past week and a half. He was just released. So my time was not 100% invested in this. He is out of the hospital now, but I just want to let you know, I hope that doesn't reflect that I don't care, because that is definitely not the case. But with this, really, we wanted to just show These are the things that we see our business owners coming to us for. These are the things that we get requests for. This is the things that we've seen that we feel like, we've done surveys from our members. I've talked to hundreds of our chamber members, and these are just the main things that we see that our members are asking for. So we wanted to just kind of bring attention to that and then see where the city is coming from and how we can connect those things and where we can meet in the middle and what things is the best for the community and as a whole. Can you go to the first slide, please? So I think the number one thing that we get calls and communication about is marketing. Help with marketing, asking to share their ads that have already been created, help with creation of ads, just any way that they can market their business. Ribbon cuttings, doing the business showcase, I know those are all really big things that are important to our businesses, and that is the number one thing I think that we get calls and just interactions with our members about. So shown, like you see 2 different ribbon cuttings that we did. And I was told that from both of these business owners, actually, that they felt like the ribbon cutting and the videos that we did with this to promote on social media, that it did bring them additional customers and additional sales. Next slide, please. So the next thing I think that is most important that we're getting the most conversations about is partnering businesses together with other businesses in networking opportunities, also with schools, and our committees. One of the committees that I'm working on right now is a business and education committee. I'm trying to get that kind of reinvigorated, I guess. I have some good people that are interested. This is something that I've really been working hard on is figuring out different ways to place students in internships and focus on building our future leaders. And so I know we have talked about this before, but right now we've partnered with about 20 different small and large businesses now in Porterville, and we have internships going. I want to say there's over 40 different kids in junior and seniors in all of our high schools that are active in different types of internships through the chamber. So that's a big request that I get. I also have gotten tons of information or asked for help with grant applications, the paycheck protection loans, PPE requests, a lot of things like that, like just help with resources in general. One thing that I get a lot of is we get a lot of businesses or people. One thing that through the pandemic that we've seen is a lot of the businesses that were kind of small that were running on Instagram and Facebook. I'm sure you guys have all seen the little pop-ups that are coming all over town. A lot of those pop-ups came from the swap meet, and when the swap meets got shut down, they kind of had to find a different way to support their families. So we've kind of seen that in working with those people, we've gotten 2 that I know for sure have moved from the swap meet and actually opened brick and mortar stores here in Porterville. So things like that I feel like has been really beneficial, and that's we just get a lot of requests for that kind of help is people that just don't even know where to start. They've been running a business, but they haven't been running a business in a legitimate way. So they need our assistance. So that's something I would like to work more closely with the city. I've tried a couple of times. I want to partner with somebody in the city's office, and if we can talk about that, I would love to do that, to figure out, to be able to walk through somebody on, okay, like this is the best way to apply for a business license. This is how it needs to be filled out. This is best practices, because I do talk to a lot of business owners that feel like the process is hard, or they've done it and there's a problem, or it's taken a really long amount of time. So I want to be the expert. I want my office to be able to be that expert if we can to help those people. Like we have a packet that we're putting together, or that we already have, that we provide to them when they approach us about opening a new business. So I would love to be that liaison for the city to say, hey, like, let us walk you through this process. You need to talk to this person, and you have this amount of days, and these are the important things that you need to make sure is on there. Next slide, please. Another thing that we get a lot of questions about is relocation information. We have a lot of different people a lot of people are moving right now. Like, the jobs have changed. Just relocation packets in general. We're getting like 15 to 20 requests of those, whether we're mailing them out in the mail, we're emailing them, or people are coming into our office. A lot of people are coming to work externships here in Porterville, or they're starting a business, or they've just been hired, and so they're just looking for references. With the jobs too, that's been one thing that is huge. All of our members have really felt that, I mean, there's so many job openings right now and not enough people to fill them, and getting those people back into those positions. So we've noticed that from our members, we've taken that feedback, and we have actively been working to try to see how we can assist with that. So one of the things that I've been doing is, like, we have interns that have been in my office, so they've been calling all of our chamber members, going on their website, grabbing any job listings that they have, listing them on our website, having them on Facebook. So that's all able to be viewed on our website now. And so I know that I've shared like a couple of posts on our Facebook that show like there's over 50 different employers here in Porterville that have positions open. So I think that if we could be a resource for people to easily find a job in Porterville, like if you're looking for one, here's an easy resource to get them. So I think that that's been really beneficial. Also connecting them with the people that they need for purchasing their home or a lender or all those types of things, just providing that information to them. Next slide. And then tourism efforts. I've been working with the STC, the Mighty 190. We've been working on different ways for just to help tourism, to bring more tourism to the area. Helping with content creation. We've been making short videos. We're looking right now, we have an RFP out looking to create a video of our town, and well, there should be like a little excerpt, like so it would be a video of the whole area, but there would be like an excerpt of 3 minutes of just showing Porterville and the things that we have to offer here and why people should come through Porterville on their way up to the Sequoias or the Trail of 100 Giants. Also, we have been working on an updated map of the area. I get that request multiple times a week. So that's just something that we have been working on as well. Next slide, please. That might be the last. So we have also been doing our drive-in movies at the sports complex. Now that we are kind of moving out of the pandemic, I know that that is going to change and look different, and that's fine. Like, we're open to that conversation to figure out how we can make it the best for the community. I actually have had, like, I know that Anthem Blue Cross has had showed interest in just like sponsoring the whole event and making it a community event. So that's kind of the direction that we hope to go in the future, is to make it a free community event. But at the time, the chamber kind of needed to figure out a way to continue a revenue source to keep going. So now that we're moving out of the pandemic, we're hopeful that we can sell those sponsorships and offer this for free to the public. That's kind of where we're at for right now.
Okay, thank you. Was there anybody from your board that wanted to add anything, or? I can turn it over back to the council, and we can just kind of continue the dialogue. I think you did a great job. Okay, great.
I like Jessica, for the record.
I just have a question, person. Is your son okay? Most important.
He will be.
Good.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think that the more business owners that I speak to, what everybody needs right now more than anything is a little bit of flexibility. I know that I've talked to so many people and so many businesses that are just struggling and grasping at straws, and everybody's just trying their best. And I think that everybody just needs a little flexibility, and I think that that's been a really good mantra for this pandemic.
Yeah, I agree. And as you know, my wife had a family emergency this weekend, and I think that affected, one of your events, and so of course, flexibility and being able to work our way through this is definitely the most important thing. Which I really appreciate the points you brought up, and the good news is a lot of those are within the contract already. As far from my point of view, I'll let other council members chime in, but I really appreciate the updates and looking at what the necessities are, and especially in the past, there's been efforts to do surveys or get feedback from businesses about what they need, and I appreciate being forthcoming with what they've actually said. So, Council, did you have any questions, Councilmember Carrillo?
I guess, and I'm not sure how the structure's gonna go, if we're just gonna have discussion or dialogue back and forth. I don't want to get ahead of anything else.
I'd say if something's on your mind now, since the ideas have been freshly presented, if you want to get it out there, we don't have to hash out each one individually, but if we get them on the table, I think that's a good starting point. And I know this is kind of a dialogue and it might be a little more free-flowing than normal, but I think that's a good way to start.
Okay. Yeah, for me, being the newest member on council, one of the things I looked forward to was working along with the chamber, just because of the time, the past year and more now that of time has gone by, and how the city, has dealt with all these challenges, the businesses have dealt with all these challenges. Really just for me wanting to understand what the chamber's role is as far, because I can envision all these things of how we can work together, and the chamber can provide support for downtown and the local businesses and for just the things that the city's going through right now. But I didn't exactly know the role of the chamber. So I really appreciated when you came in and did your first presentation and then provided the update. And then I know that council had asked for, that you would be in here, or somebody would, ongoing. So I thought that would help with showing progress over these months and seeing even the challenges, not just all the stuff that's working or that you're working really hard on, but the stuff that you're struggling with, so that we could see where we could come in or how to support, that kind of thing. So that's one. I think looking at the agreement for me is another thing that helps to kind of see what was set before, how things should go. And I guess that, just looking at, because now coming out, so that's where to start with, just kind of understanding the roles. The second part is, now that we're starting to come out of COVID and there's different, and what kind of initiatives can we do together, or what's the chamber going to do? There's a lot of funding out there. There's a lot of support that the businesses need. There's probably technical assistance, and some you mentioned that you do support with. So I think just kind of looking at those things too in moving forward, not just the COVID time and what everybody dealt with, but now are you looking at doing anything or planning or want to look at setting, I guess, some precedents of different initiatives for moving forward?
I think at this point, we have been trying, I feel like I've tried a lot of different things, but I'm trying to find kind of I want to see what the business owners need. I feel like I was doing, I've ran webinars and only had a couple of people show up. I don't want to waste my time putting together this elaborate webinar on something when there's not the need for it, And so I'm really trying to kind of figure out, that was one thing that I had really put a lot of time into, was figuring out these webinars. I get them all set up and I had not a lot of interest from businesses. So you kind of have to, I don't know, be flexible, I guess. And as far as the role of the chamber and the city, I think we were talking about when we looked at the agreements, there was different people in charge of both the chamber and the city council. So I think that those things are going to evolve. We want to see what is expected and what you guys would think ideal, so we can kind of figure out that middle ground. We want to know where we should be and what wasn't working in the past. So I think that if we could, even if we had something set up more regularly, to have those conversations where we can say, hey, I'm struggling with this, the webinars, I'm struggling with the webinars because I've done these and I didn't have any interest. Maybe we could bounce ideas off of each other or things like that. Because if there's ideas that you guys are having as well, oh, that might be something that the chamber could do. I want to do a good job, I want you guys to be wow, I feel like there's great value in the chamber. So that's always kind of been, I've managed people for a long time. And I've found that with people, 99% of the time, people want to do a fantastic job. They just need a set expectation. So I think that's why I'm here. I want to be able to have just a set expectation to say, okay, this is what we expect. And I can say, great, okay, let's figure that out. Let's figure out how that is beneficial for our businesses and how we can make that work for everyone, so I can make everyone happy, you know? It's obviously that's not going to be that easy because we've seen that, but it's hard to make everyone happy. But at least move to a place where we can work together. So I would love to have like that, a better partnership where we can have more free-flowing ideas.
Councilmember Stowe, did you have any comments?
Not at this time.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for your outreach, and I fully understand some of the, how you want to move forward with a lot, and I want to say thank you so that we could have this study session. I know you had a lot of questions, and first and foremost, in your presentation, that is what you're doing. Members of the community have also reached out. This is where we make our decisions collectively. This is why we're here, so that we can have the transparency of our communication, so we can set what it is we want. We have our city manager, but the person that we rely to on economic development is sitting right there, Mr. Jason Ridenour. That connectivity between the both of you, he would have directions all over. When I have people in the community, they said, well, whatever happened? Well, we know that the Iris Festival is one that was a given in COVID that did not happen, and neither did the installation dinner. That did not happen. And I don't know if there were people involved, but again, you have the Business Expo, the Christmas Parade, Music on Main Street. And I know that there's been involvement in the past with the Buck Schaefer Spectacular and others, the Cajun Music Fest, and so many things. You mentioned in the last reporting the Listos project. I understand that they reached out. However, in that first initial one, I believed that reach out, and if they, in that process, because of the contract that we had at the site, that things would have gotten just a little bit smoother if that had been that communication with Mr. Ridenour. As I said, that conduit is, he's in the room, and a lot with Mr. Moore, too. Some of the things that some of the members of the community have asked, well, how much does the city of Porterville make an investment to the Porterville Chamber? And I say $35,000. But we've had COVID, and there are things that we need to work through because things just didn't happen. And while we were making decisions up here on the dais with the loans that were available for the business owners, we have the COVID committee that was put in place for all of those parameters, for all of those questions. Again, it would be here where those decisions are made. When people in the community maybe have asked, well, how do we reach? Our phone numbers are public information. If there's any business owner that would want to reach and speak to us as an individual, and we listen to their concerns and we listen to their needs, and as such, if it's something that needs to be brought to discussion, this is where we would be having that discussion in the best interest of the ownership. I know that we have asked for the financials, and it's just so that we look to see where we make our investment of the $35,000. And so I just have a question. Where would that be allocated on the financial statement? Our interest in here, where would that line item be? Where would it be added on here?
I think that the investment from the city goes towards the total, to everything on the chamber, you know, as paying all of our normal day-to-day operations just to continue to be in business at this point, or to continue to be available to help.
Okay, and then I had a question as I was looking at it from the February statement, October to February, under miscellaneous income. I saw an approximate of $284, and then when I look at it through April, it shows $187,718. And so that's just a question. How did it go from 300 to the next one to 187,000?
I'm not sure exactly which one, but I know the 187,000 number is from the fire. I think that the financials, when it came to the expenses from the fire, that would account for that.
Okay, and the reason I ask, because it's on here as just miscellaneous income. And when I look at it, I would ask the question just to that regard. And again, only because we give that $35,000 and we're not, trying to make do with the chamber operations. I saw another line item on here. I saw the loan interest, but what is loan management?
Loan management?
It's 1,931.
That's my mortgage payment.
Okay, that was a question because I didn't know what it was, because it wasn't on the one before, and it is on this one.
When I first took over the chamber, they were currently using an accountant to run the books. I think that when the previous transition happened, they went from one accountant to a new accountant, and then when I took over, I felt like it was not in the best interest for us to be paying almost $1,000 a month for an accountant. The chamber cannot afford that. So I took over the bills and hired a bookkeeper for much less. So there was some kind of discrepancies while we figured out where things needed to be in the line items.
Well, thank you. That clarifies, because I didn't see it in the one before, and I'm looking at it on this one. And I'm not going to assume, which is why I'm going to ask. And it's because I see it on both. Construction EX, that's expense, is that correct? I just didn't want to assume it just has EX period.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. And I apologize if I seem like I'm being analytical, but again, it goes back into the operations and our investment.
Of course.
I look under postage expense, and I see $163 for general chamber, and then I see postage expense for other. Are there two differences, two differentiations?
No. I think it was just from an accountant going to the bookkeeper. They were figuring out where things needed to be.
Okay, I see the line item for a CPA. Is that the accountant?
Yes.
Okay, I see that line item on here. And under supplies, I'm just asking for a clarification because I see that supplies for the office, but I also see supplies for the board. Is that for the board, or is that?
No, no supplies have been bought for my board.
Okay, because it shows as a separate item, there's a $206 for the board. And that's why I was questioning it. And in the last statement, the previous one, there was not a line item, but under utilities, gas was not on there, but it is on this one.
Yes, it would be the same. I think when they downloaded the new QuickBooks for our new bookkeeper, there was like, I'm not a CPA, but there was like 900 different places that the money could go. So I had to like dial it down to show her, hey, these are the actual places where the expenses will go. But there was 900 available to begin with. So we have slowly had to work those through. Like a lot of those expenses are not expenses that we use now. It's just the QuickBooks file was 20 years old, I think.
Okay. And please, I'm not, it's not because I want to be tough. It's because I'm just asking the questions. We've not had a discussion and so.
You're totally fine. You're doing your job. I know that people question you on your expenses.
Yes, they do. They question. They have questioned the 35,000, and they questioned with regard to this, which is why I'm asking some of these questions. Is there an audited financial statement of record?
Not since I have taken over, no.
Okay, so there is not an audited financial statement. Okay, because that answers my question, because as an outsider looking in, wanting to come in and kind of wanting to know what's going on, the first thing I would want to know is on line items, the support and the revenue and the expenses, the assets and the liabilities. That's one thing I would be looking at, just straight in a summary.
I know that that is something that before our year end, that we would make sure that was completed.
Okay, that helps. And one of the questions that I was asked by a member of the community, how many members do you have active on your board?
13.
13 members? Okay,
We did
And-
lose 2 board members in the past month.
okay. And the question I was asked, is there anyone on your board from a lending institution?
No.
Okay. And again, and I appreciate the answer. As I said, there's a lot of, I think I asked a lot of questions. I don't know if, but I think I'm done for right now, reserving comment
Okay.
for another.
All right.
Thank you.
Of course.
So did you want to respond to anything? I have a few comments. You can wait till after I've done it, or if you wanted to address anything additional based on, because I know there was quite a few questions, so if you felt like you weren't
I
able
think the
to.
only thing that I would like to address is, you had mentioned the Listos event, and I think my understanding of what you were saying is that I had a misstep at that point, that there was something I could have done differently? No?
No, that's not what I said. And it should not have been misconstrued as such, because you had somebody that filled out an application which wasn't you, and it was someone, but that the reach out and the technicalities to it, if that person had reached, not the Listos, but if the person that actually filled out the application had communicated with you directly, then the phone, it would just have been, should have been just redirected this way. That's all.
Okay.
But it's a learning process.
Well, as soon as I was told about the event, I did reach out
Of
to
course.
Jason to tell him, but I think I just didn't understand, I thought that the county would just follow, or whoever would just follow what they were supposed to do. I know that, I don't want that to sound bad, but I just figured that.
But that's, no, and that's where I'm going, when in doubt, when in doubt.
I learned.
When in doubt, whether it's in this position or not, when in doubt, that way
Right.
the components will fall into place.
And I do feel like I've learned since that point that I need to lead by example in every way possible. I just need to lead by example. So doing the best thing or not the best thing, but figuring out the best partner to be like, oh, well, you should talk to this person at the city to make sure that that's okay, or to get the right information if I'm not sure on something.
I'm just going to make one more comment, and I really appreciate it. And this is why I'm glad we're having this discussion, because it's difficult for us to have individual conversations away from the dais if we're all going toward the same mission and the vision of working collaboratively.
I see, yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. And so I appreciate the questions other council members had, and I appreciate the presentation that you made. I did want to address some of your comments, and again, I'm not being critical of your comments. I understand you're trying to learn what the expectations are, maybe, and even historically, what had happened versus future, what the necessities going to need, are going to be. So a couple of comments, and I just want to assure you that the ideas that you have are not far off from what the contract says, and there's a range where things can be adjusted, but there are a few things that I did want to suggest. First of all, just to clarify on the contract, and I know, again, not seeing previously, having the benefit of seeing what had happened, I think that some of us had seen presentations before from the organization, so maybe comparing it to what we'd seen historically to what we're talking about now, and also some of your comments. So what I wanted to say was that the contract serves as a foundational basis for our relationship, and that I think to presume that it's an investment in the total operations of the organization, I think would be incorrect in the sense that the largest, and I'm just looking at your financials, the largest investment in your organization is your membership. And I think it's very important to make a distinction between member activities and non-member activities. From my standpoint, I guess personally, I think that the membership investment of the chamber pays for activities that promote membership through the chamber, to be able to take the investment from the city and apply it to someone who's already given to the chamber through their membership, while trying to serve those who are not members of the chamber. Seems that part is, it gets to be confusing, because there's kind of a double investment on one level, which can create a layer of favoritism for who gets to do what, because they're already contributing on a couple of levels. So that being said, this contract applies to the promotion of the entire city, as well as the businesses in the city. So as a general rule, it can promote everyone. However, there needs to be a distinction between activities promoting just members and activities promoting the city and non-members. So that being said, it doesn't go it shouldn't go to support the entire operation, for your ongoing activities to support people who've paid for membership. So I'll stop with that. So what I'm trying to say is, a lot of the questions generated here, some of them at least, were from the financials that have been submitted. So taking what I said first, with the contract being promotion of Porterville, there are things that have been submitted in the financials that really didn't need to be presented based on the contract. And in fact, some of the things listed in the financials may have had questions that weren't pertinent to the contract, which is the primary concern of the council and the agreement with the chamber. So when you look, I'll kind of start with some details. So the chamber responsibilities, a lot of the things you said fit right into that. Continuing to do mail solicitations, information pool services, visitor information bureau. A lot of that can be, that relocation packets fall right into that. So modifying your approach, that's all supported through the contract as far as the way I read the contract. Holiday advertising campaigns and business showcase, those all support marketing, which is one of the survey results that you highlighted in the presentation. So again, modifying the approach to that, the details could be beneficial. And the printing and distribution of informational pamphlets and brochures, business license, proper way to do business license fits right into that. So that's just honing the type of pamphlets that you would be willing to put out. But those can all be supported by the contract and the funding behind the contract, as well as the support from community development and economic development, who also have those very same, a lot of those very same ideals as what they're trying to accomplish. So I think that's just a shift of focus on certain tasks, maybe getting information from like Buxton or one of the other ways to analyze some of the economic movement in town to give you a better idea of how to focus. To me, that's easy. That's a couple meetings. That's a plan between community development, economic development, and you, and how you want to address what the movement forward is. So that's a great start for that, as well as the activities are kind of the next thing that's in the contract. And to me, that it's about 40% of what the contract entails are these activities downtown at the park. And when I say that, previous festivals counted towards these park activities. Concerts counted towards the park activities. And not all, but most expenses toward those things could be calculated in the purview of the monetary basis of the contract. So looking at your spending for those things,
That is kind of what this money can help go towards. The supporting the farmers market, art in the park, all of those things, a general promotion, I think are good things to look at. So just having understanding that there's some finite have-tos that are within the contract, but there's still flexibility. The crafters of this document, when they originally had written it, were very, were very open and flexible in the way that it could be utilized. And I think to either broaden it to where it's everything or streamline it to where it's just a few things would be too restrictive. I think the way it's written, just some tweaks here and there could really help. One of the things I wanted to point out is that your annual taxes, I think if they're done by a certified public accountant, that's something that can count towards having some sort of audit. So those are, it's not that you're not doing it, it's just, it's done, but those are things that could be presented should that ever be requested by the city. Because you have a bookkeeper who's doing your books, and then you're submitting to someone else to validate all of your books and give you information back. So you probably have some form of it. It's just navigating that way to get the information out. So it's a lot of the technical pieces of the contract that just have to have those check boxes that you're doing it. But the way you do it, the style in which you do it, that's where you have your flexibility. And I think that honing down your financials to just what is pertaining to the contract could help in the sense of reporting and making sure you're fulfilling it. But at the same time, when we have information that the numbers are there, it does lead to questions. And so the main concern, and I think I have a good idea. Everybody's had trouble this last year. So money is tight all the way around, and I understand the concern, and I think the task here is to help keep on the right track rather than delay or hinder or make it worse for anyone. So those were some of my comments just about the contract, and again, just the breakdown from my interpretation of it. If I had to put it in 5 buckets, the largest bucket would be the park activities, which would be a lot of the downtown promotion. The second priority would probably be the information that's given to folks. The printing and distribution of that is also hand in hand, but then comes the actual business showcase. And so I would say that almost 40% is the activities, just in my estimation. The printing is about 10% of what the cost, what the support you need behind that, and then just general information to folks, relocation, businesses, business information, 25%, and the business showcase and the actual promotion of Porterville and your activities, another 25%. Those are just my numbers. I really didn't mean much, just my analysis, but really looking at the contract and what's in there, I think you can do a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, and the presentation to us, I think, could be streamlined to achieve that. But I know that's a lot, so I don't know if you have anything for me to respond or any questions for me.
That is a lot. I think that what you just said helps me to have more clarity of just how I can be more clear and to show, because I feel like that does make a lot more sense to say, okay, like these are the things that you can show for the financial statements, especially so it doesn't arise so many questions. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I like what you're saying when putting it into buckets, and so understanding my time and what I need to be doing to spend that time. I feel like that's really great information. That's what I was looking for, was to see where the expectation with the council lays of where my time and money should be spent. I know that one of the things that you mentioned was benefiting members and non-members. So that, and given I didn't know that going in, but that is something that since I started, I've been trying to help everyone. Like I've helped way more members apply for grants than I have non-members, but I've gotten a couple of members through helping them as well, So I feel like I came into it with the idea that the more people that I help, maybe they can't afford to join the chamber right now, but I'm going to provide that value, that service to them. And if I help them for free, eventually they're going to be like, you know what, that service is worth something, and they'll join and they'll tell their friends about it. Or if they, either way, you have a great experience with someone, you're going to tell your friends, and we'll be able to achieve our goals more quickly.
And I think I appreciate that about the effort that the Chamber's made, especially during an emergency, during something that is new, that you didn't just stick to helping members. You tried to help as many people as possible, which in turn does help members. So I can appreciate that. And so that to me didn't go unnoticed, that you were really trying to help as many people as you can. And so just, I don't really have any other comments, actually. Councilmember Stowe, did you have any?
No, I don't.
Okay. Please.
So point of clarification, moving forward, is the activity what you want the chamber to be doing with 40% of our time? I guess that's what we're trying to understand, moving forward. How do you want, I know how it's written in the contract right now, but how do you want us moving forward? Is it the same, or are you wanting us to change the way that we're doing things? That's kind of where we're trying to, I guess the main purpose we're coming in front of you today is to understand where you want us moving forward. Not where we've been, but where you want us moving forward. And it can be the same, but we want to make sure that we understand the expectations moving forward.
And I think when I made that description, all those things can be redefined to be current, redefined to be what is, I won't say most easily done, but most efficiently done, whether it's virtual or not. It's just the trade-off for what's in there. And I think it's important to realize that this contract should never be, how would I put it? It shouldn't be a make or break for your activities as a support for a membership organization. And I think that it should always be a percentage of your, this is just my opinion, a percentage of your budget that goes toward promotion of Porterville, and not, and when if I said 40% of your time on something, I would more liken that to 40% of the value of this contract. So the rest of your time, and I think this contract may be 15, 20% of your budget, so the rest of the 80% is all yours to decide what you do with. But for us, or at least I say us, the guys that, the members of council that wrote this document in 2006, they had a certain number, they had a certain list of things that they wanted done, that they felt comfortable having a contract in exchange of funds for these services. And I think that's the important thing to hold on to, that it's not, that within that contract, those services are very defined, because then you have an expectation in how you're going to receive that back. And oftentimes this money is not on top, but a reimbursement for the services for those requested parts of the contract. So in turn, you're getting support for the things that are in the contract through that funding. So I think the question is more, how would you prefer to redefine the things that are in there? And if we're comfortable with the redefinition ongoing as a contract. Because as a contract, and I don't know if you noticed the dates, but it hadn't been updated for quite some time. And that was on purpose, because these very questions we're asking, and this is tough. It's not easy for, I don't think, any of us to look at this, because this is a change that it's not made every year. And it's infrequent, and I think it's best that way, because you have a way to establish a track record to achieve those things, rather than every year have a different target to try to hit. And I think when you're when you're assessed, when you're looked at every quarter, that's pretty tough. So if every quarter you're being looking at what you're doing, and then every year that's changing, that to me seems a difficult task. So maybe just settling on what you would like to do and seeing if it fits within these categories first, to be able to maintain the same level of investment is probably, to me, that's the primary need at this point. Because otherwise, if it deviates too much from what's already there, the number has to deviate, because the one piece that's in here is the $35,000. And that's related to our identification of how well it fits the needs in the contract and what we currently need. So I don't know if that's too much info, but.
I kind of want to follow up on that. I guess I'm trying to understand what you want us to do. Do you want us to be promoting businesses? Or are we promoting community events? Because I think that they kind of work together, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just a community event that is an event just to benefit the community as a whole, and it has nothing really to do with businesses. And some of these events do help businesses and also are a community event at the same time. So I guess that's part of what we were trying to understand too, is our role for the city to only be promoting businesses, or is our role also to be doing community events?
You want to take anybody want to take a, I know I'm talking a lot, and
That's okay. I mean, my thought and feeling is that you promote Porterville. Businesses, communities, whatever the case may be, you know, because I was chamber president at one time, and that's the approach we took. You know, you're gonna help the business, you're gonna help the community, you're gonna do whatever it takes to promote Porterville. And whether it's the Irish Festival or, you know, we have businesses that are coming into town and we promote that, or put it out, you know, throughout the paper or throughout the county, and just so we can, you know, get our names out there. And that's just my feeling.
Vice Mayor, did you have any?
I've been quiet, for a little bit. I'm just going to comment, first and foremost, that I'm going to date myself. It goes back to when I used to sit in the audience and listen to the council members that were then present, and it was Donette Carter Silva, who was here at the time and was reporting at the end of the year for the annual of everything that they had done, which I'm looking at the contract. It's an annual review because the $35,000 was allocated. And in her report were the summaries of all the information she participated and then some through the chamber in the assistance of promoting Porterville through the events that have been disclosed in the contract. And again, I'm just going to echo a sentiment that the $35,000 investment that the city of Porterville has provided the chamber, that's a very generous amount. And when I heard today the day-to-day operations, that put a little red flag, and I echo the sentiment that it should be applied. So when I'm saying that the $35,000 in the annual, we got to see, because it was public information, where some of those disbursements were made, maybe for the Iris Festival, maybe for, and there's another event that the chamber was very involved in too, with the Pioneer Days also, and so many others. So in essence, we're not going to tell the board of the chamber what to do. That is the board. And they should be, I'm not being to be rude or disrespectful, but that direction should be from the board to you as the person. And if this contract that we're looking at, and it's pretty clear, this is what we go by. And if we're saying the promotion of business, well, that's a chamber. That, I went onto the website to do the research, because that's one of the things you, just out of habit. And it specifically, if it's on the website, if I'm an outsider, I used to own a business. I belonged to 2 chambers. I was over here on Main Street. Okay, that's enough of that. But when I look at the chamber and what the benefits are, as far as the networking, the resources that are available, that is me as a business owner. But when there are events that are hosted in Porterville, through the chamber and putting the pieces together, that also brings business to Porterville on Main Street, and it supports the business owners. So that's where you look at it, if there's a disconnect, I don't know how that can be, but anytime you bring vendors on Main Street, people are going to go shopping into the stores regardless. And at the K-Jug, that was all organized through the chamber, and it brought people to Porterville, and the restaurants were open so that people would have a place to go to in the evening. It's twofold. It's a twofold in the planning. I think I've said enough. Do you think I've said enough? I get excited. I'm just getting excited on this. But first of all, I have to, and then I'm going to go back. I'm going to chime in. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. When I looked onto the website, you do have your governmental affairs. You have that committee. And I'm going to be this is me. I can't speak for the others. I believe that the chamber works very, very well in promoting the legislation for the business owners. If there is a legislation that is going to be in the best interest of the business, or if it's something that could be a red flag, through that legislation, you can support them, or you can do whatever you wish to that regard. Where, again, we as a council, this is where our decisions are made, and this is where people can come to us, and we can, regardless of which district, because when we're up here, we make decisions in the best interest of all members of the community and not per district, because we represent everyone. Am I out of line, guys? I'm okay, all right. But so in that, keep the focus, and I'm not telling you, I'm just saying you should hopefully keep the focus on the business component of all the business. We have so many here in Porterville. And looking at the contract that goes back, the events that we have made our investment are pretty much in here, but you have the flexibilities. And where we just want to see are where those allocations or the disbursements are for these events, and then some,
Yes.
but not to, when I asked, where are we on here? And if it's on a line item that specifically goes to day-to-day operations, for us, that's a red flag, for me anyway, because I worked in administration so before retirement, and I'm saying, okay, so I'm looking at it. And it's very, so I'm not sure, Mr. Ickes, I'm not sure I'm responding to the direction you say you want us to give you. Well, you're the board. And that should be something that should be worked with the chamber.
But Vice Mayor, I can kind of speak to this from the legal
Please.
side, just because it'll help a little bit, maybe kind of
Please.
solidify why we're concerned about where
Yes.
the city's funds go. So the city is only able to do this because it's authorized by law under certain circumstances to provide funding to the chamber, but it has to be related to a public benefit. It can't be just, and that's why the member, non-member discussion's important, because we, by law, in fact, we've been working on actually a draft of, of a potentially looking at changing the agreement for a while. And so the last time I looked at this was earlier last year. And Alan Bailey from the chamber side and me from the other side, we were working on the language together. But what I had come up with was looking at what our purposes say we can actually, and putting that in the recitals. And the language was that we're authorized by law to approve the expenditure of monies accruing to the general fund in any one fiscal year for music and promotional activities, including promotion of sister city and town affiliation programs, and to promote and support activities that assist the general welfare of its community members. So our funding has to go towards those ends. So but of course, in general, when you have programs that go towards those things, that in turn then has a benefit to the businesses, both member and non-members, and that would include the chamber members and the chamber itself. So it's a mutual benefit, but it is important that our funding goes towards the public welfare aspect of what the chamber's activities are.
I think I'm sorry, just to clarify, I think that from my end, when I say that your funds went to the general fund, we'll say, of the chamber, in the past year, we have not been able to do any events. They've all been virtual. So, and I was a staff of one for the first 6 months of coming onto the chamber, I would say, the first 4 months, 5 months. So I know that I helped at least 70 different businesses apply for, grants and things like that. So I feel like my understanding was that, like, yes, it might be in a general use fund, but if I wasn't there to help those people, to give them the resources to tell, okay, like, this is how you can apply for this, this is how you can apply for this, this is how you get a business license. If I wasn't there and we wouldn't have been able to provide those services. So it still did go to the general public, and it still did help everyone, even though we didn't have events. But
And
going forward, I do think that we can.
And you're absolutely right, it doesn't have to be just events. And so, I mean, that's a list of things. So from the legal side, there's no violation of law there, that funding that we provided the chamber goes towards those specific activities. I think what the council may be wanting, they just want to be able to see it so that they can then track that, right? And be able to see where the funding, see that it's going into those tangible programs that benefit the general public.
Right, and
Yeah.
I think what you said is true. The activities you were able to participate in were very limited, just like everything else that we were trying to do. So some of the only activities that you could do, which were at that time your general operation because that's all you were able to do,
Right.
I think a lot of them fit into this. And I think that the real technical part of this is those definitions and delineating which of those things apply to this and which don't. And this year, a lot of them may have applied to the contract, but the pity about it is that our investment isn't enough to carry you through all year. So that's the part that maybe drew the red flag. But just one thing I wanted to kind of mention, this is my opinion, but just a general understanding is that within the city or in general, economic development brings the businesses to the city. The chamber helps to retain the businesses, and that is to support the client base, customer base, promote them, also to advocate for their needs to us. And where that may be threatening to us at times if it's something that is difficult for us to do or maybe costly, having a voice to coalesce all those ideas and bring that forward is a necessity, because individually they'll never do it. They would rather just feel bad, like there's no help, and then we lose businesses.
Right.
But the retention of those businesses is a real critical part of what the chamber can do. And I would just say in general, based on the benefit explanation that the city attorney gave, when you can bring people from outside Porterville to see Porterville, to enjoy Porterville, to stay in Porterville, or spend in Porterville, those are some of the things that we're looking for, because with that, we're not able to really go out and do that ourselves. And I think what we really view this contract is an extension of what we want but can't go and do ourselves, because being a nonprofit, you have a lot more opportunity to seek support from other sources, to apply to participate in activities in other places, to get this just general more feel-good support for an effort than sometimes we do, because we're busy supplying water, trash, sewer, and charging for those services, and where those actually help to keep the businesses in town with services, we can't be an advocate for them to ourselves. So that's one piece that I think is a huge piece, and of course, from personally, it's always better if it's positive advocacy toward us, but if it's a necessity and we need to hear it, that's fine too. So again, understanding your limitations this past year and maybe not being able to do the concerts and things, but the things you were doing, I think you were trying to
to benefit the city. But I think one important piece, and I guess, it's hard to say this or make a judgment about it, because what we went through last year may never happen again. Maybe it was a one-off thing, or maybe something we have to be prepared for. But I think we did learn that communicating, between the city staff, community development, economic development, and the chamber is important if we want to keep everybody on the right track. And I think the biggest piece that you can play a role in is maybe not recruiting the businesses, because that takes a lot of effort, a lot of money, and details that you may not know, but really setting the stage for them to do it right. So having a good idea what the expectations are ahead of time by having discussions with Jason and his department about what the common problems with people starting businesses are, and then you giving them all the right information so that it's more of a success story than a challenge, so that advocacy doesn't turn into you telling us how difficult it is. It turns into them being able to walk through the system with your assistance, and everybody ends up happy.
Thank you.
This is not meant to come across critical whatsoever, but I do feel as if some of the commentary tonight has been a little bit critical. And I would just like to say, not as an excuse to Jessica, but in defense of her, she came in not only during right when the pandemic was really in full force, but she also had the fire where she lost so many records, and she was basically building from the ground up and starting from scratch. So when we met collectively, I myself am very, very new to the council, to the chamber, and I think you are as well. And that's because there was a need. There is not a lot of seasoned business members or council, chamber members, I'm sorry, using up the words, that were willing to step forward and help. So we were coming in hopes that, not to ask for an itemized agenda of what you want to see us progressively do for the city and for the bill going forward, but just more or less for us to have an understanding of what our relationship together looks like between council and chamber. It wasn't to necessarily ask you to plan it out for us, or to, and we understand that's our job as a board, is to go make these decisions and implement them and bring them to you for however that needs to work out communication-wise. So I just wanted to address that. For me personally, that's what this meeting, I was hoping to get out of it. And so many questions were answered, and I do appreciate the time and the support. But I would also like to make one other statement. You said that you cannot be an advocate for business, which I completely understand. You have so many hats to wear as a mayor, as a council member. But you can be a support to small businesses, and I feel like there has been a lack of that. And I've heard that from many other businesses. So I just wanted to say that as well. And lastly, I would just like to ask one question. Going forward, if she is able, or we are able to stick with the contract and these activities and promoting the city as a whole, do you see the value if we are able to fulfill our end of the contract? Is your financial value, do you see financial value in that? That's my question.
Well, okay, so I don't really know where to begin. So I don't know that the comments made so far have been necessarily critical as well as factual. Excuse me, I'm talking. Could you state your name for the record, please? Okay, just want to make sure I knew. It hasn't been critical. I mean, this is a discussion, and in fact, the contractual obligation is there, so it's not critical. This is informative. I think the only critical piece that has happened tonight is what you said to me, which doesn't necessarily help me want to answer your question, but I think that the value is in what's put to us with the financial statement. And if the activities in the financial statement match, that is your contract, and that's what it is. I don't know that, I wouldn't necessarily say the chamber and the city council are on an even playing field. I think you're contracted by us. We're not contracted by you, although we do try to help the businesses in town. So I think that making it an even conversation, I think, is a mistake, because you have a contract with us. If you wish, or you could let Dennis go ahead and try to clean it up.
My statement was directed to the council, not to you personally. I just want to clarify that.
Oh, you said mayor, sorry, I thought you were addressing me.
No, I just meant, as you are the mayor, the leadership of the council. That's all I applied that to.
Okay.
Respectfully. But no, and I do understand that we are contracted and that we are not on the same level playing field. I completely understand that. What I'm asking you is, if I have, say, a cable service and I'm not finding value in that, I'm going to end my contract with that. So I'm not asking whether you want to end the contract with the chamber. I'm just asking, do you see value, if we are, as we fulfill our contractual agreement with you, do you see the value, or are you considering maybe removing some of the funding because you don't see value? That's my question, basically.
Well, I think the value is in the completion of the contract, and just to be clear, no one's talked about reducing the amount except for just now. So if that's part of the conversation, then I think maybe you should let another board member explain where that fits.
I do have a statement. You asked for support for more than 15, 20 years. We've been giving this money to the chamber, I think. And ever since I've been in Porterville, I know that the council's been in support of the chamber, has never have, been against the chamber. We even gave you this money during the COVID when nothing was going on with the chamber. So yes, there is a value, and we always thought it was a value. Otherwise, we wouldn't be supporting the chamber. I think the chamber is very valuable to, when businesses look at, coming to Porterville, they're going to look and see if there's a chamber of commerce. And then they're going to call you, instead of calling us most of the time. Sometimes they will call us, but most of the time they're going to call the chamber. And you're going to give them that information, what they need to know, hopefully, and the right information. So, don't think that the council's not supporting the chamber. When we're giving you $35,000 each time, and even when there's, some members may have questions, there's great support from the council to the chamber. Even the businesses, they just don't understand that we have to do things in order. We can't do things that one business gets away with something and the other business doesn't. Everybody's going to be treated the same. And I know what businesses are saying because, Porterville's not lax or on the COVID. No, we're not, because the state said we couldn't be. And we went by the state guidelines from the very beginning, and we stayed with them. So, yeah, we do support our businesses, and we do support the chamber. And I think there's a value in the chamber. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Can I make a comment, Mayor?
Please.
So I wanted to talk a little bit too about the support or lack of. Since I got on council this year, one of the committees that I joined was the COVID ad hoc. And a lot of the items that would come forth were businesses that wanted to do temporary use permits and do outdoor dining or do adjustments to parking lots or whatever so that they could continue services on some level, any level. And that was so important to us that there were times we met weekly so that we could hear 2 to 8 to 10 different issues so that we could get those approved or make recommendations and bring them to the next council meeting so that those businesses, those temporary use permits could be approved ASAP. The other thing is, anytime there was a ad hoc meeting called, we would have to have packets of information prepared by staff. And sometimes that was done within a day, within hours, so that we could hear those. And that's how much we support trying to get the businesses to get what they needed to survive. The thing is that what Councilmember Stowe also touched on was we have to follow state guidelines regardless of what the counties, other cities, other towns are doing. We just followed those. We didn't do anything above and beyond what those guidelines were. And part of that was to protect the community, the city that we live in, when we have the hospital full, the ICU was full, the ventilators were full. That's what we were watching, but we were still trying to make those decisions as quickly as possible. And I know that personally because I sit on that committee and we still actually hear those being brought forward just today, for instance. But that's just what I wanted to comment on because that's kind of how I took your comment too about lack of support to businesses or the chamber. And I mean, I would love to support the chamber more and hear you in here more and hear about what's going on. But yeah, that's my comments on that.
Thank you, Kelly. I think that part of the frustration, and I think that Monty, you touched on it perfectly, is that you stated that sometimes there's negative feedback and you guys need that. And I think that that's been something that's been hard for me because I've reached out to, I know I've reached out to the people on council, I've reached out to my board, like, hey, how can I make this communication happen? Because I do get a lot of negative feedback and I want to be able to pass that on. But I feel like I was at a really hard place because I have the businesses telling me, well, you're just reporting to the city, like you're not an advocate for business, you're just the city's henchman. Like they thought I was the person calling the cops on them or like just, and I know that you guys saw how dramatic this got and it was hard. It impacted people's livelihood. And I would hope that the council was making the best decision by just following the guidelines. Like, I understand that. But it was hard for us to constantly be receiving this feedback and not know how to go about giving it. Because I know that we were all a little worried, like, how is that going to be received? I don't want it to come across as there's lots of negative, but I do feel like it's my duty to report that feedback. And so that was kind of a big part of this meeting to begin with, is I wanted to know how to express that and get that across, like, hey, like, I have a salon owner that she says that every morning her husband has to walk her into work because there's somebody sleeping or has pooped in front of her salon building. She calls me every week to tell me about it. She's one of my members. And like little things like that consistently happen. And I don't necessarily want to come up in front of city council and say like all these negative things because I don't want it to seem like I'm being negative. I'm not a negative person. I'm very positive and I try to put a positive spin on everything. So I think I appreciate that you giving me that green light to say, yeah, hey, we want that feedback. Everybody needs feedback to grow. I think that that's an important part of anybody's job and business. So I appreciate that. And I do feel like I'm able to give that feedback when I need to give it.
So the question I have is, how would you like to receive feedback when we do get it, whether it be positive or negative? Do you want it in council meetings? Do you want us to go directly to John or to Jason? Or how does the council want us to provide that feedback?
I think generally during oral communications, if there's information as it comes in, it's perfectly appropriate to attend a meeting and see what else is on the agenda and then address us through oral communications. That's typically how a business owner may do it, although if they don't feel confident enough to do it or feel alone, then but I think it works well when you have a number of people who have the same idea because there's really not a necessity when it's one issue. That's, that's just what a business owner should come in and say. If it's a larger issue and mentioning it, that's how it gets onto the radar. But I don't, city manager.
Well, and I was just going to add, part of, you could say provide feedback, but also to inform. You hold a monthly meeting where under GAC, you give the example of a homeless individual. You say, well, have you contacted the police department? Have you done a no trespass order on your property? There are things that part of that's being the resource to them, not to just hear a complaint, but how do you solve it?
Precisely, yes.
And then also recognizing that, there are legal limitations. And I'll just use that example where you say somebody's calling you every day. Well, there are remedies that they can take themselves individually for their business. But even in addition to that is just to understand the bigger framework that you're working within, which is the law is not in favor of public agencies in this at all. And by the way, we're not the only one that's dealing with it. But we're also perhaps the most progressive in terms of addressing it consistent with the law. So it works both ways. It's just not feedback. It's also informing and making folks aware of what are the steps that are being taken. That's the whole reason you have a GAC meeting once a month, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to add too that some of these, so it kind of depends on the situation. When that specific example, actually can just go to staff and probably be handled, and so that then you are aware of what the remedies are. Staff can inform you.
Exactly,
Then
yeah.
a dialogue- If there is something we can do, then we know, and now we might be able to do something about it. But then there are times when I think the council also wants to hear more regular reporting. And so, yeah, there's oral communications, but there's also the opportunity, if the council wants to do it at their discretion, they could actually schedule, you can have more regular times. You could have a report item on periodically. And that was even discussed as part of what we talked about the draft agreement.
If I
Put
could be
on
so
for
bold,
the city
the
council
reason
meeting.
we're in quarterly reporting is because there wasn't any that was happening.
Right.
And the way to compel that to happen was to say in an agreement, you have to do it once a month. No, it wasn't
Right.
you, but what you're seeing is a manifestation of a history
Right.
where that wasn't, if you look back to the 06 agreement, it didn't contain that.
Right.
It just said there'll be an annual report. Well, I guess that took for granted that there was regular reporting and communication occurring, and then that didn't happen. And the way to compel that to happen was to modify the agreement to say it will happen on a quarterly basis. And then it modified again to say, and it was a matter of trying to help the chamber from a cash flow standpoint of saying, going through an entire year and waiting to the end of the year essentially to be reimbursed for the activities, it would be better from a cash flow purpose that was done on a quarterly, and that was the last modification. It made sense, and it was a matter of trying to help both sides benefiting from, we have this appropriation here, what's the best way that helps from the financial wherewithal of the chamber, as well as the city's already appropriated it. So since '06, and haven't had the opportunity to kind of been involved, I mean, it's always been how to work together and to have communication. And there has been times when that communication's not been there, and like I said, that's why there's a quarterly report, because there was zero happening. And the only way to provide, as opposed to, I've had experiences in the past where the chamber, every meeting, came and provide, this is what's happened in the last 2 weeks. Just like the AB 1, 2, 3, 4 reports, and those here's the activities that's happened, here's the thing, and look forward to this. And when I see you in 2 weeks from now, I'll have talked about what you can look forward to and what you can look forward in the next 2 weeks. So
Okay.
I know it's a huge time commitment, and I know that's challenging with the challenges you've had as well. But a lot of this, I think, goes to communication. You call it feedback. I say it's information. It's a two-way
agree.
street, and being informed about what is the frameworks going on within the community. I mean, obviously, we just came through an unprecedented. And by the way, they did it for free. They get paid $20 a meeting, but other than that, every committee you hear them talk about, they don't get paid for it. And usually it's having to go to Visalia for the meeting during the day. So if you have to take off work, to not get
You
paid
wanna
to
say
go to a
something?
meeting so it worked. It's not like some elected officials that get paid $125,000 a year to do it, so not the case.
I know,
Sorry to be defensive of it, but
No, you're
it's,
fine.
a lot of time was spent. Staff's paid to do, talk about this. That's our job. Our job is to try to present the information as you see with our agenda packets. But in the end, a lot of policy has been established and a lot of decisions made, basically in community service. Just as as members of the chamber, the board aren't paid either, right? So you're doing it to the benefit of, to the best extent of the community, and all shares considered.
And I appreciate that feedback too, like that, because I think that, I don't know if all of our board is even on the same page, but I know that I have felt like every time I'm coming to the city council, I'm worried that I'm going to say the wrong thing and we're going to lose funding, and then where are we going to be? So I think that knowing that we can have that communication, and that that's not necessarily the case, like the funding is not going to be reviewed every 2 months, or obviously that's not quarter, but I don't get a lot of sleep lately, I'm sorry.
I know the vice mayor wants to say something, but I just want to make it clear. I was trying to be constructive in my statements earlier, and communication is definitely one of the most important things. But I want to point out, you have a board member that's basically accused the vice mayor and myself of taking money illegally on social media. That is not the kind of communication or the kind of proactive way to get a better partnership from the chamber. What we need is when initiatives at the city come, that you come and you're in support of the things that we're trying to do, not trying to stab our back through a cowardly social media post. I think that's disgusting. And to me, that you lose all my support. You totally lose all my support when you have people on your board that are attacking us in ways that we can't defend ourselves. And I was trying to be kind about it, but to some degree, you should feel threatened. If you have people that are threatening us and you're dependent on the money that we have to spend and be accountable to the public for, you should be scared to lose it. If you have people in your corner that are continually attacking us unjustifiably, you should be scared.
Well, I
Vice Mayor?
feel like you're kind of attacking me, and I have no knowledge of that. That's never been brought to my attention. So that's, just so we can be on the same page.
Well, ask Miss Wilson. She's sitting right there.
If I may make a statement, I know that he is talking about me, but if I may clarify, Mr. Reyes, that was a statement, a post that I made on the personal page, had nothing to do with the Chamber of Commerce, or even as a business. It was a personal statement that I made prior to being on the board, and I have made no reference whatsoever to city council since I have been a board member. So that is not something you should be concerned with.
Okay, well, I appreciate you coming clean with saying that you said it.
But I would like to clarify that I did not accuse either you or Ms. Flores, Mrs. Flores, Ms., I'm sorry, I don't know, of taking any, I never said anything about you taking money. I don't understand where you misconstrued that statement. I have never accused you of any kind of theft. I don't understand where that is coming from.
I think that my board can assess that situation on a separate note. I don't think that that needs to be part of this conversation. I mean, hopefully.
I'm just upset that I didn't get any. Why don't you?
I'm going to comment. I'm here to be proactive. I am choosing to not be reactive because we have to move in the direction of assisting the businesses. I have always supported the chamber as members in the past, especially when I had my own business. It was Frugal Fashions, and I had it for many years while I was gainfully employed. So I do care for the small businesses, especially those that have struggled a lot. So when people say that we have no compassion, well, that's wrong. With that being said, first of all, I'm going to try to summarize this to get back to the focus of the contract, which is why we're here this evening. There has never been a discussion of any sort with the removal of any funds. Never has that been brought to the table. And I applaud and I commend you for standing there because you're listening to all the dialogues that are going on this evening. I will be very supportive of the council that have worked very frivolously on the COVID ad hoc committee. There were numerous times that staff went out to many of the restaurants to help them come in so that they can open outside, and then there was never a follow-through. Everything that was recommended from the COVID committee to the small businesses, I am well aware that through our economic development department, there have been numerous small business owners that have made numerous phone calls, and through that department, they have provided resources and contacts so that people and small business owners can get the assistance to fill out the applications and also work with consultants that spoke Spanish to help the Spanish-speaking small business owner. So with that being said, I believe that this evening, Mayor, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, We have had a lot of dialogue. And I believe, again, I think we need to come back and bring it back to the contract and the future and moving forward of where it is we're going to go from here on. And I am certain, just from the conversations that we have had this evening, there will be more communications. And as I shared with you when we spoke, and it was a very, when we spoke, I said, our numbers, our mobile phone numbers, our public information, our emails are public information. There have been numerous times where I have gotten phone calls from business owners. And if you haven't seen me on Main Street taking pictures of the areas of concern, well, guess what? That information gets submitted and it goes back to some of the things that fall back on the business owner. So there are things that we have been collectively doing separately and individually, but as far as providing a service to all businesses, especially in the economic development and the growth of this community, we rely on our economic development department. They have traveled miles. They have gone out of town. They have brought back information so that we can collectively make a decision here on the dais. And when we're talking about the homeless, well, guess what? Porterville is the very first in Tulare County that we've made an investment for our city with the navigation center and the resources that are available. Again, we understand that there are laws that do protect the homeless, so there's certain limitations that the city can do. However, if a homeless, they get the services, they have those benefits, the resources, and we've just now gotten a full-time eligibility worker on there from the county. All of that is available. So I hope you're feeling better this evening, Jessica, because you should. It's been very good to have this dialogue, and I am very grateful and appreciative that we are all here collectively this evening.
Thank you. I feel like I'm in a much better place. I feel like we have a better understanding of what the expectation is and how we can best partner together.
Well, thank you.
Mayor,
Thank
can I
you.
add one more thing? So when I mentioned the ad hoc committee, one of the things I want to leave with that is an example, I think, that might help in moving forward. So when I mentioned how we meet and we review the applications, and a lot of times they were incomplete or there was something missing, and so we didn't just put it to the side and say, oh, we'll look at that next time or whatever. The staff already tried to gather as much information as possible. They would go back, make calls, like the vice mayor just spoke of. So one of the things that I felt could have been a good role, or even something like that, but using that as an example, is the staff that's so knowledgeable, and I see the effort that they put into even before we get to that meeting. We have emails full of information and everything that's submitted. And then during the meeting, if we have questions, those questions should really be directed to the business. And our staff is already prepared to answer a lot of those so that we can move it forward or go gather more information. By the time it comes back, they already pretty much have done every effort they can to gather that. I think maybe like that communication between you and the staff would probably greatly help. Not just the council, but those businesses. Because if they're complaining or they think they don't understand the process and you knew the process or you knew where to go and get that information quickly, it probably could have helped 10, 20 more businesses that were in that same situation. That's a good example to me of how I could have seen communication help, and then maybe you would know, a little bit more of the process yourself and say, no, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's a simple application. They want a simple map. This is all you need. and here's the person you contact. And I know they're very responsive, and I know they're very resourceful. And so I just want to provide that as an example of what I was mentioning earlier.
No, I think that that's a great point. We actually, when I first came on, that was one of the first things that we worked on that I worked on, was trying to bring the business, the outdoor dining to Porterville. And so I did work on that originally, but then at a certain point, we had kind of decided that the city needed to take that because it wasn't something that the chamber, it was more on the insurance liability side of it. But I never got back into that conversation. So you're right, I could have followed up, and I think that's a great point, like ways that I can be more involved. And so if there's instances like that, like I would love to be more involved, if there's a way that we can make that happen. I don't know the correct way to feel free to give them my card, But I would love to get that information too. Like if you have those instances, I know you have a million things to do, but if you have those instances where you have somebody going through that, like I would love to work with them to figure out the best way to, that is something that I do actively, is help people with community events. And like since I've started, now that I've done it a couple of times, I've been helping other organizations do that as well. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so council, what do you think the best way to proceed with the goal of establishing mutual goals and objectives is? I know we've had some conversations. I know we probably need to have some exact items to put into that category of mutual goals and objectives. Is there, I don't know that we have enough to change anything definitively as of yet. Is this something that ideas should be submitted to staff and then brought back to us for a proposed amendment, or?
Yeah, I mean, so like I had mentioned before, so I know this was before, right as I think Jessica was coming on board, or maybe just before you came on board. So, yeah, so you weren't, it was, again, prior to your time. There had been some work done on a draft. We could start with that, recirculate it to Jessica, so she has, I don't even know if you have this copy
No.
of this proposed draft, probably not. So to take a look at, because it's pretty well fleshed out with regard to the chamber, like at least some discussion. Now granted, some of it may be outdated, some of it may no longer apply. I mean, because there were some specific events, and I don't know if you guys are thinking about it, but I think you can look at it as more as examples if you wanted to do that. But what I'd suggest is I can run it by you guys first, and then it can go to the chamber once you guys think it's meeting with what you guys were thinking would be, at least a good starting point. And then we can maybe get that dialogue going and back and forth. You guys can take a look at it. In fact, I think I can already provide you with a draft just so you know what I'm working off of, because I'm pretty sure, I know Alan already had his eyes on it,
Okay.
so.
I think that would be reasonable to have that draft, and we look at it and then go from there too, and then provide the chamber with that too. And it's moving with the,
Yeah. I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
it's to be moving in that direction.
Okay.
It's a springboard,
I just think that's correct.
definitely not set in stone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's hard to award the contract based on the changes that have been made. So prior to awarding any portion, we should probably have this resolved, I'd say. Okay, so do we want to set a
Follow-up, or I don't know, it's up to you, or there's a number of ways you guys can do this. You can set up a follow-up meeting, or you could appoint a staff liaison or something to kind of go back and forth and then report back. It's really up to you guys how you would like to.
I think this is, have the liaison to come back and.
You could even direct COVID ad hoc to take a look at it if you wanted, if you want to use a committee before it comes back to so that we don't have to keep
Well,
having notice.
You've
meetings
got to
on
do
it.
one, which is your city internal.
Oh, yeah, the
audit
internal audit committee, since we're doing our other
This would
agreements.
actually be the
Yes.
city
Sounds
internal audit
scary.
committee.
I'm like, I don't know about that one.
No, it actually fits in line with, that is one of which is to look at the.
Yeah, that one will work too.
Fiduciary responsibilities of the city and the contracts and has and.
And you can
ensures
go
that
to
it-
those meetings,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
that's an open and public one. That's a standing committee instead of an ad hoc committee, so.
Perfect.
That's a good, actually, I like that, that's a great idea.
Okay.
I like it.
I think that's a perfect idea.
Okay, then.
All right, any other comments?
That agenda for that meeting is getting longer and longer.
You don't mind extra work.
That's right.
I know you have extra time.
I just wanted to say, I appreciate you guys meeting with us. This has helped me a ton to understand where you're at. And that's, as a board, we've been trying to understand exactly what our role is and where you want us moving forward. So it's been very helpful. So I appreciate you taking time out of your night on a special night when it's not when you're scheduling meetings. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And if I just may say as well that I do appreciate it, even being on just this board, seeing the amount of meetings that I need to attend and Zoom meetings, I can't even begin to fathom the amount of time that it takes for you to volunteer your time. So I don't want you to misconstrue my statements or my tone for lack of appreciation. I understand that you do work very hard for our city, and I do believe you have our best interests at heart, and I do appreciate that, and I do thank you for your time this evening.
Okay, council, any other comments? No, let's see.
So if I can, what we'll do is just to summarize, so we'll circulate the draft of the agreement that the city attorney and chamber council was working on. And we'll share it with the internal audit committee, which is looking to meet
Thursday.
next week.
The 3rd.
Next week,
Thursday, yeah.
next Thursday right now. We need to, there's some noticing stuff and those sorts of things, and probably won't get into, I don't know, I'll leave that to the committee to the extent that the depth that they get into it. But we have some other big stuff to talk about as well.
course.
So some of it may be, part of it's going to be establishing their work program. So, but they would definitely be providing a report back to the council from that meeting, plus it's an open meeting, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we can share that draft perhaps
We'll
and
loop you
discuss
in
it a
with
little bit, spend
Thank
some
you.
time talking about what that draft purpose was in comparison to what's already been previously agreed to.
So if there are no further comments, we will adjourn the meeting. Next meeting is June 1st.